Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm pleased to be here to co-present Transforming Your Organization Through Culture Change. My name is Brian Littlehale, and I'm the owner and president of Vitruvian Leadership. Just to share a little bit about myself, I've been in the leadership and employee development arena for over 25 years. I've worked in the direct mail, manufacturing industry, and financial services industry, along with transportation industry and also the housing industry. I've done tens of thousands of hours of professional development and executive coaching, and I absolutely love what I do. Today, we're going to introduce you to Vitruvian leadership methods and models to create culture change. And with that, I would also like to introduce my co-presenter, Dan Farrell. Dan is the executive director at the Allentown Housing Authority. Dan?
Thank you, Brian. As Brian mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Allentown Housing Authority. We have 46 employees here at the Housing Authority. We assist about 2,500 families here in the Allentown area, and we've done kind of the mixture of housing programs, public housing, voucher. We've done L.E.A.D, and we've done a Hope 6. So we have a pretty diverse portfolio of housing here in the community, and we were kind of the laboratory for this experiment that we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely, and what I do want to say is that this can be used in any environment. This is a methodology that is really about transformational leadership, and as opposed to transactional leadership. And so I want to let you know that Dan has been a great partner to work with, and his team has really embraced the transformation that we've put forth within their organization. So without further ado, let's keep moving on. The first thing that I want to talk about is that there are three organizational oversights that negatively impact culture. The first one is that an organization may give vague feedback, or worse yet, none at all. And when I say none at all, that can be a real shot in the arm and truly impact an organization. Let me show you why. 4 out of 10 workers are actively disengaged when they get little to no feedback. That means that if you've got 10 workers, 4 of them are really struggling because they don't feel like they're inspired, and they don't feel like they're contributing. Add to that, SHRM report found that 82% of employees appreciate positive and negative feedback. In other words, employees want to know what they are doing right and how they can improve. People do not go to work to lose. They really truly go there to grow professionally and personally. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to inspire that and foster that kind of environment. The second organizational oversight is that they don't give their team strengths, roles, and responsibility. I'm sorry, they don't recognize their team's strengths, roles, and responsibilities effectively. In other words, what are the clear roles and responsibilities, and how do they know if they're doing the job right or if they're doing it wrong? They may think they're doing great, but are we giving them the kind of feedback and strengthening their roles based on clear directions and clear roles and responsibilities? eFactory, which is an English company out of the United Kingdom, they did research, and what they found is that employees who experience role clarity are 53% more efficient and 27% more effective at work than their employees who have role ambiguity. If better equipped and engaged, their efficiency and effectiveness actually could literally double. So this is, again, speaking to the fact that we want to make sure that our employees really know what their roles and responsibilities are. So there's the relational side, and then there's the structural side. This is speaking to the structural side. If I know what I'm supposed to do, I can do it efficiently, I can do it effectively, and I feel like I have purpose. The third oversight is they aren't equipping or developing their leadership. 83% of businesses say it's important to develop leaders at all levels. 77% of organizations report they're experiencing a leadership gap. Only 1 in 10 people have the talent to lead and manage. The good news is it can be learned. So so the main point here is that there are people that want to learn, that they want to be equipped, they want to learn, they do care about leadership, and companies in general want that to happen as well. But clearly there's a void. There isn't a management structure. So the emphasis should be on developing leaders at all levels over the organization. It's about creating an environment of growth and development. It really is transformational. It's based in transformational leadership. Dan, do you want to add to that?
No, no, just the main thing is to emphasize the development at all levels. So this isn't just coming in and educating the CEO or the CFO or something like that. It's actually, those leaders that exist throughout your organization. And even though you may not realize they're there, they are there, and they'll benefit from development and this opportunity.
Absolutely. Um, Only 5% of businesses have implemented leadership development strategies for all levels of their organization. Now think about that, only 5%. You line up 100 businesses, only 5% are really developing their leadership at all levels. What these statistics are pointing out is leadership development is desired, but many organizations really are not sure where or how to start. The truth is leadership development is equal parts soft and hard skills, which are far too often overlooked. It's about intentionally implementing strategies and systems that are collaborative and effective. So we're gonna walk through this because we really want to make sure that we that Dan and I really point out that there's a high correlation between how we lead our teams and the impact on productivity and profitability of the business. Um, it is about people. It's about the processes. It's about performance. When you've developed strong relationships with your people, they have clear roles and responsibility. The process becomes easier, and of course, they will perform. And really, what that turns into is simply this: it turns into a dollar saved is a dollar earned, as opposed to a dollar sold is 20 cents earned. It's about understanding that key performance indicators and key performance areas are being measured and managed at a very high level so that we can impact the efficiencies and the effectiveness. And I want to talk about efficiency and effectiveness because I think it's really important. If you jump into cold water, of course, your blood is your body's natural reaction to hypothermia is to make sure that the blood flows to the essential organs. In other words, it becomes very, very efficient, um, um, and make sure that those organs are still pumping and getting blood flow. But truth be told, is it's about effectiveness. It's making sure all the capillaries, all the fingers and toes are getting blood, and that's what we're looking for. So when we look at a dollar saved as a dollar earned, that's really what I would call being effective. Whereas a dollar sold is 20 cents earned is being efficient. And it's only relying on one bucket, if you will, of profit. So to have effective leaders is critical because effective leaders lead effective teams. Organizational culture and strategic visioning determines how we lead into the future. How we lead determines how the team executes, and how the team executes determines how the organization functions. Strategic execution is the result of our ability to collaboratively and realistically align people, time, resources, and attainable goals. Teams learning to effectively and tactically adjust along the way in an effort to deliver the promised results. Because if you were to ask any leader, if you were to go and ask them what is the number one thing that they're looking to do, it is always the same answer. And the answer is they're looking for results. And the only way to get those results is to, again, have a solid vision and strategically execute with a team that really believes that they're part of something that's bigger than themselves. Dan, would you like to add to that? Because I know there's that was one when I went and I worked with Dan. Dan, we started that process 3 years ago,
About
correct?
3 years, right?
And let me ask you, and this is not a comment. This is part of your process. Um, how do you think your team strategically executed?
Oh, it was, I mean, when we started, that was part of the reason that we were doing starting this process is that, our execution wasn't really good. The roles weren't, I mean, everybody had job titles and everything, but what your job title meant, what you actually did, and how what you were doing fit into the overall strategy of the housing authority and trying to get things accomplished wasn't well defined or well understood. So it was easy for kind of people to do what they thought uh, was the right thing when in fact it could have been counterproductive. So kind of we definitely weren't all on the same page.
Absolutely. Do you think that your team did more planning than strategic thinking?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, lots of meetings, lots of planning, very little execution.
And so this isn't about, and I want to be very clear. This talk presentation isn't about having lots of meetings. It is about teaching the tools and developing a team that are strategic thinkers that aren't planners, and that's an important differentiation that I think needs to be discussed. So let me
It, it's also not a it's also not an effective meetings issue either. The thing where you write an agenda and give somebody 2 minutes for this and a minute for that and everything. Really isn't. That's really not what this is. It's about thinking and execution as opposed to planning.
absolutely. Um, well, let's look at that. When we talk about planning, you notice there's a continuum here of highly dissatisfied to highly satisfied. When we talk about planning, we really are talking about spontaneous and stagnant type behavior. And what I mean is that we just create a checklist, a to-do list. It doesn't really move anything other than that you get something off your plate, if you will. That's what a good to-do list does, and there's nothing wrong with a good to-do list, but it's really is truly a list of sort of the things you have to get off your plate. There's a potential to misuse resources when you're planning. Um, and the reason why is that you kind of tend to go after the low hanging fruit. What are the things I need to get done? Do I need to file? Do I need to do, do I need to take a walk to the water cooler? Whatever it is, it's low hanging fruit typically. The other thing that is difficult about planning is that when a setback occurs, uh, it's viewed as an emergency. And then what happens is that you risk a culture of confusion. In other words, there's a lot of finger pointing and blaming that occurs because we kind of planned it, but it wasn't true strategic thinking. So let's look at the difference. Let's look at what strategic thinking is. Strategic thinking is really about dynamic thinking, and it provides flexibility. We're getting together to look at all of the resources. We're collaborative and it's qualitative. We know what the numbers are. We know where people need to be. It's sort of similar to project management. The difference is that we're working as an organization to look at the projects that we have and making sure that we have the required quantitative allocations of resources. We've got to make sure that there are things that we're looking at, such as time and actual physical resources, human resources, outside vendors. All of those things become part of that strategic thinking. Everybody's pouring into that conversation. Tasks are purposeful, they're efficient, and they're effective. And that's the key here. It's not a to-do list. They're real tasks, and there's clear roles and responsibilities that the team sees. Setbacks now are viewed as an obstacle, right? We have a measured response. Everybody's on the same page. We see where we're going. We know where we're going. We're aligned. We live a culture of core values, which is a really key piece here. You
Yeah.
see the word culture of core values. One of the things we're going to delve into in a couple minutes is what are core values and why are they important to a team? But you have to live a culture of core values, and it's a big piece to the strategic thinking. In other words, what we do matters, and we want to make sure that we're pouring ourselves into that with purpose and with forethought. So that we get the results, again, what business owners are always looking for and executive directors are the business results. What are those results? So to talk about results, I really want to kind of dive into the results that we had at Allentown Housing Authority. Now, I want to kind of position this, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dan. Basically, I came in 3 years ago. They had just administered a couple months before the employee survey. Now, I want to explain why we did the employee survey. It was a baseline. It's so important when I go into any organization, I want to have a baseline. I also want to create some kind of 360-degree view of what the departments look like, not necessarily the individuals that are managing it, but what does it all look like, and where are the pinch points, if you will. And so we did this in 2017, and then we will also share with you the results of 2020. With that, with me kind of positioning that, Dan, would you like to take over here?
Yeah, kind of as Brian's mentioned, so we've had this longer term commitment to doing an employee survey. And so we're looking at the 2017, excuse me, and the improvement we saw in the 2020 version of the survey. And there's no magic to the survey. We chose these categories were what we wanted feedback on, and they're pretty consistent over all the surveys that we've run. And staff, it's a 5-point scale, so you indicate your agreement or disagreement on a 5-point scale. So that's why these numbers are 3.4 and 3.8 and that kind of a variety. We do the survey. It's anonymous. We do break it down by staff, by category, accounting, maintenance, so we can kind of compare departments to see if we have issues within the various departments. But the staff, we're a pretty typical housing authority. About a little over half of the staff is hired through civil service. The other staff, the maintenance staff, is represented by a bargaining unit. So it's pretty typical. But up through 2017, we kind of did a survey. We would do a survey. We would have some focus groups and things like that. We'd try a couple of things, and then we'd come back with another survey and kind of see the same results. So we knew we were kind of stuck in a rut there and needed to do something different. And that's when we brought Brian in, and he introduced the core values, which I think were the one, if I could point to one thing, made the difference in the 2017 survey to the 2020 survey. And these are just an additional comparison. So these are the staff, the groups that we identified. We have 45, 46 employees, so none of these groups is huge by any stretch of imagination. But you can see, overall we had in the communication category, we had a 25% improvement in a 3-year period, and then we showed improvement in the other categories as well, in the other staff groups as well. Excuse me. Accounting was new for this year. We realized our accounting staff was getting large enough that they could have their own group and get us some additional comparison there. But as you can see, made a big jump with our maintenance department between 2017 and 2020 on communication issues.
And what would you equate what was the defining factor for communication improving?
Well, the identification of the core values was a big part of that, and it also just back to the definition again, right? So on the communication, it's easy to as a director, to kind of almost personalize these, and it's a reflection of how I'm doing as a director. But in reality, this is more how the organization communicates top to bottom. So it includes providing direction, but it also includes providing feedback. And I think the feedback loops that we were able to build in made a big difference because I think staff could provide feedback and it was heard and improve that relationship significantly.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll add to this is that we didn't just do this. We went in and we did workshops. We did a whole workshop on the performance gap interview and taught his managers and his leadership team how to really do a performance gap interview. What does that look like? How do you position that? So if somebody's not meeting their expectations, how can I help them? How can I position it so that they understand here's the expectation, here's where we need to be, how can I help you, and is there anything that you need? And so that was a big piece to it. Also, we started doing recognition and recognizing. We went in and did a whole thing on feedback and recognition, and why that workshop was pretty popular. It really helped people see that what they do truly does matter. And so recognition was a big piece as well. Supervision.
Obviously supervision was another category, not quite the dramatic improvement in supervision that we saw in communication, but part of what happened too with this process is, so this wasn't just, supervision isn't just the executive director, right? It's the supervisors within the departments that provide the day-to-day direction. And I think it was a little bit of a better understanding of that and more accountability in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, one of the things, if we go back to the statistics that we were talking about, clear roles and responsibilities. I think that was one of the big pieces here is that we really focused on what are their roles, what are their responsibilities, and how do they see where what they do impacts what happens as things flow to them, as well as how things flow out to other departments. And so they started to really take a hold of those skill sets and the key performance indicators that they had to focus on.
So as Brian mentioned, we did some things on employee recognition. So we added it as a category in the 2020 survey. So there's not a comparison to the 2017, but as you can see by the scores here, it was very well accepted. And we did a number of different levels of recognition, and we did it with some intention. And it was a variety of things. Some are really simple. So, I have on my lanyard here my service pins for the years that I've been at the Housing Authority. And we just had a meeting a week or so ago, and we had an employee who has been here 40 years. And he was really touched by the fact that he got a pin. But it's a simple pin. But it is kind of a way at our quarterly staff meeting to stand up and say, this gentleman, this woman, they've been here for 10, 15, 20 years, to kind of recognize the amount of time they've been with the organization and kind of the institutional knowledge that comes with that. So that I think that recognition makes them a little more of a resource to their fellow employees. It's a small thanks for their time that they've been here, but it's important for that recognition. The other thing we do is we have an employee of the quarter, kind of a that's more formal. So somebody does something to help somebody out, somebody helps a resident, and they get nominated and recognized. And we do gift cards. We have like a grab bag of gift cards that they can go into the hat and pull out a gift card. So it's a way that they can have lunch on the Housing Authority, or depending on go out to eat with their spouse or family as part of that as well. So that helps. But I think one of the more effective things that we've done, we have a core based on our core values. And I know it's hard to see this card over the video, but it's a postcard, but it's a recognition of living one of our core cultural values. And the goal behind these was to make them informal. So and kind of spur of the moment. So if somebody helped somebody with a project, or somebody had an issue today that they needed assistance with, it would be a way that just almost peer to peer, somebody could thank another employee. It's not formal. You don't have to wait for the quarterly staff meeting, but it reinforces the core values. But it's also a way to give out some recognition. And I'll walk around the office and I'll look, and a number of offices, these are tacked up someplace in the office, the front of the file cabinet, the little bulletin board they may have in their office, something like that. So there's a good deal of pride in these, and I think we'll have a meeting of some kind, and we'll start the first 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting filling out cards. So kind of as a reminder of the importance of doing them. And it's pretty impressive to see the things that coworkers recognize each other for. It's not, somebody brought me coffee today or something like that, but it's, truly um, staff helping each other out and trying to make each other's workday go smoother and be more effective.
Yeah, it definitely creates an environment of safety and actually in some cases um, some vulnerability. But
Hmm.
here are the overall scores. And again, I just want to reiterate when I walked into my first workshop to present some of this in 2017, um, you would have thunk that I'd walked into a funeral. Nobody was really engaging. Granted, it was 8:39 in the morning, but I was kind of little. I was concerned because there was no interaction. Now, when I go back and I go into any workshops, it's amazing to see the difference. People are talking, they're sharing ideas. There is a camaraderie, a feel of teamwork,
Yeah.
and Dan recognized that this is what they needed. They needed to feel like they have purpose. And I think when we look at these overall scores here, that's what it's suggesting. When I look at just the numbers itself, a 29% increase in the aggregate. That's huge. That's huge. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, we had always been kind of anticipated when we do a survey to see not a lot of improvement from one to the other. So it really kind of it was a pleasant surprise to see these numbers. And part of what we do when we do our survey is we go back and we present the survey to the staff. So we don't just take the survey and put it in the drawer someplace, nobody sees it at all. Is that we actually make this presentation and show staff this information. And I think they were, truly surprised the last year when we went through the survey with them, gave them the feedback. It was important to see, there that there was change, and what I might have felt as an individual employee was mirrored by other coworkers, and it wasn't just a one-off, one-person kind of a thing. It was truly a change in the organization.
Yeah, it's really about alignment, and that's really what you see is that the team is aligned. And I'm not saying that it's all of a sudden kumbaya sitting around a fire pit. That's not what I'm suggesting. There's still struggles that everybody has, but they handle those struggles as a team. They talk about it. It isn't
Hmm.
it isn't siloed. They're really looking at the larger picture because Dan has casted a vision, and that's what is so important here is that the overall change here is that there's a vision and people feel like there's some purpose to what they're doing, and it really is about changing the culture. So let me kind of delve into what culture kind of is. Let me give you a visual. Here's a 10-person bike. If your company was a 10-person bicycle, statistically speaking, you've got three employees who are pedaling their hearts out. Hold on, we've got a little bit of an interruption, so let this come back. All right, let me start again here because we had that interruption. If you were a 10-person bicycle, statistically speaking, three employees are pedaling their hearts out. They're the ones right up at the front in the green that really are work hard and make things happen. They truly are committed to making the organization run. Then what you have is you have the five that are just along for the ride. They're pretending to pedal. They're what I would say they typically are compliant individuals. When we talk about transformational leadership, we talk about commitment and we talk about compliance. And in the middle, you have those that are compliant. They're not necessarily doing anything bad, but they're not necessarily doing anything good. They're kind of cruising along, collecting a paycheck, and they'll contribute if they think it's important to them or it means something to them. If not, they kind of just do their thing. Now, what are the two on the back doing? Well, the two on the back are what we call in leadership transformation theory. They're the ones that are resisting. They create conflict. Birds of a feather flock together, if you were. That's who these folks are. They're the ones that are talking, if you will, trash about the organization. They're not contributing to the organization, and as a result, culture is impacted by their mere presence. Um, and um, so the question is how do you change culture? So if this is your organization, you've got the three up front peddling their hearts out, you've got the five in the middle, and then you've got the two that are conflicted and creating resistance, right? They're slamming on the brakes. So here's my point. How do you change that? It's actually real simple. It's through core cultural values. It's creating a culture. Core cultural values are the sinew, the binding agent that holds an organization together. And I'll get into this a little later, but here's my point. If you want to change culture, you've got to get the five in the middle just to kind of turn green on a consistent basis. You got to give them more purpose. You got to invite them in to be part of sharing ideas, thoughts, and be creative. It's inspiring them. It's initializing and deputizing their value and their worth to the organization. And that can be done very easily through having them involved, taking on projects, etc. Now, what do you do with the two on the back? Well, there's two things, actually three things. One, you can bop them on the head, do the whack-a-mole thing, and say you're done, get out. That's one possibility. The other two options is the second option is that you can basically let them leave. They're not going to fit over a period of time, and they're going to recognize it, and they're going to go, I don't fit this culture anymore. And you hold them accountable to the expectations through the performance gap interview and through coaching and corrective action. Now, the third option is the crazy thing. If you are doing culture change, guess what sometimes happens? That guy that is in the red, all of a sudden changes and says, you know what? This is what I've been looking for. Maybe this isn't so bad after all. Now, I will tell you at Allentown Housing Authority, and Dan can attest to this, there was one of these people that were in the red, and he became a green.
Yeah.
He started to pedal, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um, because all of a sudden he had purpose, and he realized that this was about his legacy too. What was he doing? He'd been there a long time. He'd received some of those pins, and all of a sudden he realized, you know what? I can do better. I need to do better. And so what I'm trying to say is the people that are in resistant mode can really become compliant and/or can actually be committed. In this case, this guy became compliant first and was like, all right, I'll show up to some of the meetings, I'll do some of the things I'm being asked to do, and dipped his toe into the water, if you will, and then he jumped in. He was baptized by fire in the core cultural values of Allentown Housing Authority. So that's how culture works. And Vitruvian leadership really truly does have a system that we use called the L.E.A.D Model. And we come in and we work through core cultural values and through structural and relational aspects of the job or of the environment, and really foster those and make sure that we bring it to the forefront so that it's about people, processes, and performance, because ultimately it's about productivity and profitability. So let's jump right into what core cultural values are, because this is, you've heard us talking about it. Here are, with drum roll, no further ado, here are Allentown Housing Authority's core cultural values. Dan?
Yeah, so as Brian mentioned, these are our core cultural values, and it's important to emphasize that they're ours. So these are not, this isn't some algorithm you put in the computer and spits out core culture values or something like that. We developed these as a group. We had, I think, about 13 or 14 people in the room. And these are the things that were important to us. And for a variety of different reasons, I can look at this list and I can kind of see where it came from, just having been in the organization. But the other thing that was important with these is there's some definition to them. So, safety matters, which is protecting the safety, dignity, and well-being of our community. So this isn't, wear the yellow vest and the reflective vest when you're outside, or the hard hat when something could fall on your head. This is about it's about creating a safe environment for both our staff and for our residents. Lead with purpose, encourage innovation, commitment to respect and integrity within, are all things that are really important to us. And then we could identify with them, which helped. It also provides us with it's a good focal point. So when an incident comes up or an issue comes up that we're trying to address, it's very centering to say, okay, what core cultural value are we trying to represent here, or what core cultural value is represented? Kind of creates a little bit of a pause, and lets someone think about it and identify it and talk about it in a cultural value context, as opposed to, this was what you did was right or wrong. It's about, doing it better, and with more intent, as opposed to just doing something. And I think that's really important. It's also important to emphasize here, this is different than a vision statement. This is different than a mission statement. That's something that's completely different. But this is the work environment that we want to work in, is one that reflects these core values.
Yeah, when he says this was based on consensus, it really is theirs. When I came in, what I do is when I do this workshop, we send out a core values assessment, and the people that are involved, the leadership team, takes that core value assessment, and then what we do is we take those assessments and we really start to whittle it down to what were the common terms, what were the common words that were used, and from that what we do is that the group starts to create their statement. So in this case, lead with purpose. That was a big piece, and so they talked about what does that mean, and then they went around and they shared what that mean, and we went around and there's a whole process that we put them through. But what it did is it increased team buy-in. That's really what it was about. It was about team buy-in. It wasn't off the shelf, or textbook type thing. This was an organic process, and the staff participated in this. It provides that focal point. And I want to say this, it's about safety and it's about vulnerability. And I said that before. Core values are about safety. It creates a guide rail that we stay within. You start to live this. What I mean
Yeah.
by live it is that it's brought up in meetings. It's mentioned in emails. When we do recognition, the recognition is put out there. This is about vulnerability. You'll hear me talk often about SEAL Team 6 and Bin Laden, and I will tell you some of the toughest guys I know, Navy SEALs, create vulnerability, and they use what they call an AAR. Now, an AAR is not a weapon. It is, but it's not the kind of weapon that shoots bullets. It's an after-action review. So when they had to go into that compound, they set up a mock compound, and they trained for 3 days, 4 days. And the bottom line is what they did is they did every step, and after each scenario, they went back and did an AAR, an after action review. And they pointed out vulnerabilities because it's a matter of life and death. And in this case, it really was about a matter of life and death. And of course, when they went in the day of, the helicopter broke down. But that was something that they'd practiced in one of their scenarios on the last day. So they knew exactly what to do and they didn't misstep. And again, that's the strategic thinking. That's the strategic planning that goes on within a high performance team. They're really looking and molding and finding ways to train and close those performance gaps. And I would also say this, when you have these, it's also critical when you're hiring. Dan, I need you to speak to this
Yes.
because this was huge. The core values were used in the interview process in a way to ensure that we weren't fixing a position that was missing. We were fitting somebody in that position. Go ahead.
Yeah, that I mean, we kind of we have revamped our hiring process in that making the core values an important part, and also looking for, so we're not just looking for a skill set, we're also looking for a fit. So, how does this candidate fit? Will this candidate fit in the organization? Do they reflect our core values? And will they be an addition to the team as opposed to just another person walking down the hallway? I think to kind of go back on this a little bit as well is that, um, the part of the message to the staff with the creation of the core values is that, we weren't going down the whack-a-mole path. So that as issues came up, it wasn't about, identifying the culprit and kind of beating them over the head and make sure they don't do it again. But it's a learning environment. It's a commitment to the core values. It's making sure that if we fail forward, and not just fail to blow it up or whatever the case might be. So that's really important.
Yeah, fail forward, fail fast. Yeah, and you bring up a very good point. So very important, because the team has to, one, feel safe. They have to feel vulnerable, but also, um, uh, they need to be able to come together and talk about, where they dropped the ball. How can we fix this, and make sure that we're fitting the right solution, not only the right people to the. So again, it's about managing those resources. So it
Hmm.
is about, we talk about leadership transformation, but we're also talking about cultural transformation. And so let me kind of give you a picture here. This is, again, if you picture the bike, if you put that down at the bottom here, we've got those who are resisting, we've got change agents that have potential to develop their awareness and grow, and then we've got those who are committed, are willing and ready. They're the servant leaders. They're there. But culture really is about the current environment. What's the current environment that we have? What's the experiential belief that we have? In other words, what are the artifacts, if you will? What do we, when I say that, when I talk about culture, what are the artifacts? I'm talking about, what's the documentation? What are the standard operating procedures, the skill sets? What are the beliefs? And are we living to those expectations? Are we living those beliefs? So we have a current environment. Are we living to the expectation with clear roles and responsibilities? And is there a belief? Or are we doing the SOP of shortcuts and avoiding some of those artifacts, if you will, those SOPs
Hmm.
and steps, right? Which then creates a negative, where the actions that people see are negative. I was just sharing about somebody who hasn't received, a whole organization that just didn't receive any kind of bonus or any kind of pay raise over the past 3 years, and the boss drives in with a Porsche today. What kind of statement is that? Right? People are upset. New year, no more, not a raise, and yet the guy's driving in with a Porsche. Not a good message. Not something that's going to create momentous action. It's going to create division, and ultimately, what that creates is the results and the relationships that suffer. Right? So it's about positional. So when we're at the top here, we're talking about your position. So as now, let's look at this on an individual basis. That one person sitting on the bike. There's those people that are on the left side who create an environment where there's force, coercion, and manipulation. Right? We know those folks, or they're resisting. Birds of a feather flock together. There's a pecking order. Any of those things, if you have that current environment, the experiential belief is that I don't matter, and unless it's transactional and they get something and I get something, and there is no momentous action, just what needs to get done, and the result is that it's pretty stale and pretty stagnant. On the right side, and I'll use the Star Wars. We've left the dark side. We're going to the Force now. On the right side, it's very different. There's trust, there's exchange, there's engagement, there's transformational leadership that's going on the right side, as opposed to the left side, which tends to be more transactional. All right. And I'm not saying transactional leadership is necessarily a bad thing, but there's parts of it that really do. If that's what you focus on, then you're not growing. And if you're only focusing on results and not people, then it's not going to grow. It's going to be very stagnant. So on the right side, we see engagement, right? We're engaging our team. We're encouraging them. There's an exchange. There's trust being created, and we create alignment. And so that is culture in a nutshell, right? What you're looking at here is really a great visual of what culture looks like. So what Vitruvian leadership tries to do is bring in our brand of training and our model, because we truly believe that we need to teach lead, and teach people how to lead, because it really is about looking beyond. It's creating that vision. It is also engaging, equipping, and enlarging the team. It's about applying a strategy, and it's about delivering the results. You got to deliver the results, because ultimately that's what you're measured on. Dan, are you measured on your results when you
Yep.
go in front of the board? Yep,
Mhm.
that's pretty much it. They're not interested. Sometimes they're interested in the vision, but they're not interested in how you engage a team. They're not interested in necessarily your strategy on a myopic level. They just want to know that you're getting the results. Now,
Yep.
here's the interesting thing: the housing authority, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. A housing authority is just like any kind of private entity out there, because they have boards. They have to answer to the board. But here's the difference: Dan has to be very transparent. His team has to be very transparent. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, and I think it's easy to forget about that transparency and the cost associated with it, and all the work that goes with it. So as a public entity, whether if we don't want to be transparent, somebody's going to start hitting us with right to know requests or lawsuits or whatever to force us to be transparent. So to me, it's the key difference between a public entity and a private entity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me dig a little deeper into the lead model, because I really want to make sure that we share with you today, what it really entails. When we look at the L and the E, the look beyond, the equip, the that is really about relational. And then there's the structural side. So I want you to delineate the two, and why that's important, and you'll understand why in a moment. When we look beyond, we provide a vision. We create a culture of safety and vulnerability, which we talked about. So when I came into Allentown Housing Authority, and when I go into any of the organizations that I work with, the first thing I do is I really do, I meet with the executives, particularly the executive, the COO, typically, or president, and we do executive coaching. We spend a good 6 to 10 hours doing executive coaching, and we talk about creating a compelling vision. What's that vision? What's it look like? That compelling vision is absolutely critical, because you've got to get buy-in. You've got to get people to see that what you have to offer is about their growth, that they have an investment in this. So Dan created compelling vision. But the first thing that he also recognized, before he can completely dedicate himself to that vision, and cast that vision, he wanted to make sure that we had that baseline in the assessment. So we at Vitruvian Leadership, we do various assessments. We do Hogan assessments. We do DISC assessments. But that baseline was for Dan was the employee survey. That was a big one. And the reason we did the employee survey again was so that he could see all the different departments and do kind of a 360-degree assessment of the management team or the leadership team that he had in place, and how are they being perceived. You can have character, you can be a good person, but that doesn't mean that you're being perceived well. And so, I always put it, I can't remember who used this analogy. I believe it was John Maxwell. He said, character is the pilot of a plane. Perception is the co-pilot. And if either one of them are out of whack, the plane might be crashing, right? And I've seen sometimes where the character and the perception is both bad, and then guess what? It blows up. Bottom line is that assessment is really critical to what for Dan to create that vision. And then Dan created that vision based on that assessment. And we came in and we started to engage, equip the team. We talked about self-accountability. If you can't be accountable to yourself, how can you be accountable to the team? I share the story of my grandfather, who when I was 10 years old, I went to visit, and during that time, I wasn't the most clean young man, and he made me clean. And after 5 minutes, he came back with and said, it's not good enough. Do it again." So I cleaned more and came back 5 minutes later, and he said, "Still not good." Now, mind you, he was a sergeant in the Army, World War II and Korean veteran. At this point, I started getting tears in my eyes. He says, "Come here, boy." And he called me Brian. He said, he's a Texan. He said, "Brian, come here." And he said to me, "If you can't be accountable to yourself, how could you ever be accountable to a team?" Very powerful statement. It was about servant leadership. It's about serving others. It's about team relationships and providing the tools and techniques to help them develop the people around them and to develop themselves. We did a lot of professional development coaching, working with his leadership team, his core leadership team, and professional development coaching. This was critical to the Allentown Housing Authority and his core leadership team. Dan, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, the investment in coaching really was critical. I mean, from my perspective, it gave me the opportunity to let go of some of the frustration that I would experience from time to time. But also the same for staff, is that the coaching was helpful, getting them to understand why we were doing what we were doing, and it created kind of a safe space for everybody. I didn't get reports if when Brian had coaching sessions or anything like that. So, and it just kind of helped.
Saying I was confidential?
And worked. It gave us a chance to kind of work some stuff out, right? Because you always get part of that hesitancy that Brian mentioned when he first came in. It's like, well, how is what I'm going to say going to be perceived? And so a lot of times, people won't say anything, or they'll say the most outrageous thing they can think of. But the coaching, I think, allowed us to work some of that through in a way that meetings became more effective, communication became more effective, because it wasn't no, don't do that. It was, how about this, and providing some guidance to do something more effective. So that was a huge part of what we did.
No, thanks, Dan. And what I'll add to that is, yes, it is confidential, but it doesn't mean I never throw anybody under the bus. But what I will say is I will ask questions that sometimes are leading based on what I've heard, so that uh, Dan included, so that they kind of start to have that realization that, oh, maybe there is some awareness here that I need to, or things that I need to change. And that's very helpful. Because again, how if you've got three people saying you're perceived like this, then you might need to go and change your saddle because it's creaking. Especially if you hear it the third time, it's time to get a new saddle. So it is helpful from a coaching perspective and professional development. But I also want to say that executive coaching is different than professional development coaching. Executive coaching is really talking about visioning and casting that vision in the bigger picture, whereas personal development is about professional development and personal development. So, okay, so the other piece here is the structural side, applying the strategy. It's intentional, it's purposeful. There's clear roles and responsibility. We did, we looked at quality control. We talked about, department core cultural values. We went into departments and started creating departmental core cultural values and key performance indicators for the organization. Now, I want to explain this, the KPIs versus the KPAs. Key performance indicators are what I consider departmental key performance indicators. In other words, if I'm in Dan's case, if I've set a standard for collecting 95% of all rent every month by the 23rd or 21st day of the month, that it's all reported, then that is important. That's because we now know what is coming in financially, and that affects the KPA, which is the key performance area, which is operating income and operating ratios. So you have a measurement that you can look at. And what I call this is drafting. It also may mean how it can impact a department downstream. So if I have to make sure that I get so many files for compliance done, I know if I do that, that it affects maintenance, because maintenance needs to go in and turn over an apartment or turn over a dwelling. So that is drafting. So it's like two trucks driving behind each other. There's less resistance. And as a result, we save on fuel. Again, a dollar saved is a dollar earned, as opposed to the 20 cents, a dollar sold, 20 cents earned. That's the difference, and that's where the KPIs really are impacted. Is when you have, if you improved each department, if you were to improve each department in your organization by just 5%, what would that save you as an organization? Very interesting question. And companies can do that when they have a true up and down managerial leadership training program and that focuses on relationships and structure. So the final piece here is deliver the results. It's the measured results. It's the feedback, the recognition, the shared benefits. It's the reporting. We're able to go back and look at those KPIs and how that impacts the KPAs. It's making those tactical adjustments as a team because we've talked about it. We all know what we're supposed to do, and we're all on board, and we're aligned. We're moving in the same direction. We're drafting. And you're able to put in the cost controls that are necessary to have a highly efficient and effective company that's productive and profitable. So let's kind of look at this again. You notice in the middle here, this is kind of a visual, and Dan, I'll let you kind of take over here on the next slide. But this one I'm going to cover. This is the core cultural values is again, like I said earlier, it's the grout, it's the sinew, it's what binds the relational and the structural piece together, right? So we have the L.E. and the A.D, right? The relational is about people development. It's about improved team focus. It's increasing trust within the team and the organization. It's increased and improved the communication between departments and between people. It decreases finger pointing, excuses, and the blame game. And it fosters an environment of trust, training, and mentoring at all levels of the organization. Personal and professional development is achieved during this process. We're giving you the tools. We're bringing in our brain, and we're teaching you some of the basic transformational leadership tools that really can impact your organization. On the structural side, it's about processes, performance, and results. We decrease liability because we're looking at the numbers. We identify cost controls and develop helpful measurements. We improve productivity and profitability. We hire to fit, not to fix. We address measurable and observable performance gaps. We do an employee survey. You saw the results of Dan's organization's survey. We do the performance gap interview where we're there to help, not to hurt. We want to coach and create corrective actions. That is what that's what the basic model is. That's the basic overview. We're focusing on the lead to help people lead, and we're looking at relational and structural aspects of the organization. Dan, will you talk about a little bit about the outcome from the people development?
So this is kind of the hard part, I guess I would say to this, in that you're looking at outcomes and you're measuring specific things, not just stuff in general. And why you're running this report, or why you've identified this performance indicator. But a big part of this is the accountability. It's how am I holding myself accountable, and how am I being accountable to our team? And because I can't. It's not so much I can't ask them to do something I wouldn't do, but it's modeling the behavior. It's setting that example. It's it's leading by example. And this was a lot. We've invested a lot here because it's kind of lined things up for us a lot better organizationally. So we see how we fit with another department. We see how what we do. We have a 10-step process, and it doesn't matter. You can fill in the blank at the top what the 10-step process is. But very few of our processes does one person or department do all 10 steps. So with another department, another individual has some number of steps, it kind of helps demonstrate, so if maintenance isn't turning a unit, we can't occupy the unit, then we can't collect the rent. If the department is not, if the people calculating the rent aren't calculating the rent properly and timely, we can't issue our rent statements, so we can't collect the right rent. And it helped everybody kind of understand that much better and actually visually see it. I mean, we actually did this as a visual exercise, and it's very helpful because we used to be, well, here's administration, here's maintenance, never the two shall meet. When in reality, there's a lot of cross connection there, and important things. If we don't, if accounting doesn't order the parts for the maintenance staff that they need, then the work doesn't get done. It doesn't get done because maintenance didn't want to do it. It didn't get done because the parts didn't get ordered. But it kind of helps demonstrate how those things are connected. Plus, we have to kind of trust that we're going to do what needs to be done for the process to work. I don't need to come over and fill out I don't need to make the phone call to the vendor to order the part. I just need to do the requisition because I trust somebody else is going to order it, and they're going to trust that I filled it out correctly, so that the widget, the blue widget that we need to make the repair doesn't come as a red widget that's the wrong thing. So that's a real important part of this, and one of the benefits of it. It's been kind of real eye-opening in that respect to, oh, this is how this works, and here's how I connect, and I think really kind of increase the perception of our individual jobs and tasks because we know they're connected to something.
Absolutely. And really, it's about the structural outcome as well, the process, performance, and the results. The byproduct of structural analysis is quality control. And that's really what it comes down to in all aspects of the organization. People know their clear roles and responsibilities. They share the resources. There's team transparency, follow through, feedback, recognition. Again, those key performance indicators and key performance areas and the performance gap interviews. The structural piece is critical.
Yeah.
So we've got the relational side where we're doing some very good stuff with developing those relationships. And then we've got the structural side, which Dan was alluding to. When we do our job, it flows and it flows very well. And the team ends up benefiting. So really what it comes down to is when you are committed to your team, you develop trust and connection. That commitment transforms the character of your people and your organization. And I will say this, I've watched Dan, he's been committed to his team. And I want to just let you know, Dan, that you've done an amazing job transforming your organization and the people within your organization. And it really has shown. Let me just ask you this before we take some questions. How did your team perform in the COVID environment? What was, because this kind of was an interesting time to be able to measure this. What do you think how do you think it's impacted your team?
Well, thank you for those kind results, and I want to, or kind comments, and I want to, share with you that you've made a real connection with staff, and that's been real important in your work as well. But I mean, COVID was kind of the proof to the pudding, or whatever that statement is, right? I mean, kind of came out of nowhere, something that we didn't really anticipate. But we've done some really great stuff through COVID. We've been able to maintain our occupancy. We've been able to work together. Not being, we were out of the office for some significant period of time, and so we could work without seeing each other and everything, and that wouldn't have happened with all the work we'd done in the 2 years prior to that. That really showed that it was a good investment and beneficial. I kind of shudder to think what COVID had been like if we hadn't done this work, because it just would have been a real disaster.
Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate hearing that. So we want to respect people's time. We can take a question or two. You truly are the architect of your future. Here's our personal information. If you'd like to contact Dan or myself, please do. I have a question that says, how do you help your team with change and help them accept it? How can you manage change? It's a great question. It really,
It is.
it's central to everything that we're doing here. That's the interesting thing, is when you have core cultural values and you've set up the clear roles and responsibilities and the structure that we kind of alluded to in the beginning, and you've got true transformational leadership happening, change is not listen, change is not a choice. It's going to happen. But what this model helps you do is have the systems and the structure in place to manage that change in an open, transparent environment.
Yep.
Dan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that, change is the constant.
Hmm.
And, in our case, the COVID was just a little bit of a change, but we were prepared and ready to deal with it, and have survived and flourished throughout it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. We've definitely gone our hour. We've gone a little bit over, so I apologize. But I want to thank everybody on behalf of Vitruvian Leadership. Dan, thank you very much for
Thank you.
participating and sharing in this. Dan and I enjoy working together, and so please reach out if you have any questions, if you have any needs. We'd be more than willing to talk to you about how we might be able to walk in and help you change the culture that you currently have in your organization. With that being said, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.